Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Jess Faulds. Mrs. Jess, how are you doing, ma?
I am doing well. We got some great weather here in Calgary today, so I can't complain.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Jess. And firstly, you are a certified holistic and nutrition coach. Can you
Yes.
please, Jess, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Jess?
Yep. So I have a degree in health science or medical science. I have a university degree in nutrition and dietetic sciences, which I got. And unfortunately, at the time, it's probably changed now. At the time that I did the degree for nutrition, focused very heavily on the Canadian Food Guide. And as someone who does not consume dairy or meat, I spent a lot of time defending my diet against why I wasn't eating the Canadian Food Guide. So then I got certified as a holistic coach. So I'm kind of this weird mix of science and holistic nutrition. Everything I do is backed up by science, but there is a holistic aspect to it. And I went through that whole journey as a way, I got diagnosed with MS when I was 15. So I went through it as a way to kind of treat my MS and kind of manage my disease because the what you eat really, really does matter. It makes a huge difference. And so now I'm a cycle instructor and a personal trainer, and I teach like classes and I help people with their nutrition. And I do online workshops. And it's just a huge passion for me because I've seen firsthand how important our diet is, and it has saved my life on numerous occasions.
Yes, diet is very, very powerful. Even most of the time now, we do hear majority of the diets we eat, they say, chemical stuff like that, but real diet is very, very important. And I also like to dive to any book, from you've had a lot of experience from your childhood, even to the point you are today. Have you written any book or are you planning to write any book in the coming future, Mrs. Jess?
I am actually, funny that you asked, working on my first book. I had a very interesting year last year. I was working in an office that was quite toxic, and I ended up leaving the job and focusing on my mental health. And that's when I got really into sharing my MS story. And I met this woman who has convinced me. She's like, "This needs to be a book." If we had time and I could go through my whole MS story, I failed off of four medications. At one point, I got Legionnaire's disease and necrotizing pneumonia, so I almost died from one of the treatments. In 2019, I had a stem cell transplant, and I was patient, I believe, five in Calgary to have the stem cell transplant. And I've been MS free since, so I have had no progression. I've had no symptoms. My MRIs have actually shown that some of my lesions have healed themselves. And so as I tell the story and everything that I went through and everything that I learned, she goes, "This needs to be a book." So I'm in the midst of actually writing my whole MS story the last 20 years, from 15 to now in my 30s. And it's quite the adventure to write a book. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll keep you posted if it comes out. But I am writing one.
Definitely. I'm definitely happy you're even writing one because it will be a very, very good one for a lot of women to or also people to learn from, honestly speaking. And I also like to dive to the point of the what it's like to go through when it comes to menopause at the age of 27. Even if I'm not educated, like I do know that menopause is something that comes when a woman is around, I think, 40 or 45 years of age. So to have it probably as an early age could be probably, difficult. I knew you said you knew that it will be, coming. I would like to ask what you feel like, you know, it is to go through a menopause at the age of 27, Mrs. Jess.
Yeah, so like I said, I did a stem cell transplant in 2019 for my MS. I was 27 at the time. And the reason I did the stem cell transplant is because I had failed off of four other treatments. And one of the treatments I failed off was supposed to stop the progression in 90% of patients. And I was in the 10% it didn't. Um, so my doctor sent me down. He said, "I want you to do a stem cell transplant." And I'll be honest, I had some choice words. I said, "Screw that. Nope. There's probably some swear words involved." I didn't want to do it. And one of the main reasons I did not want to do it was because I knew it would affect my fertility. And I did not have kids at the time. I still don't have kids yet. I knew it was going to affect my fertility. And the reason I knew that is because when you sit down and you talk through the whole procedure, the stem cell transplant that I did was It's called an autologous hemopoietic stem cell transplant. So autologous means it's my own stem cells. So they harvested the stem cells from me and they gave them back. I don't have to worry about any rejection. But to do the stem cell transplant, I had to do 11 rounds of chemotherapy in 8 days. So they kill off everything. And then they say, based on, they have a bunch of factors, one of them being your age, based how old you are when you do this, we are at 95% sure that you will enter menopause. And I will say, so menopause typically hits around 45 to 50. 40 to 45 tends to be kind of what they call perimenopause, sometimes a little bit earlier than that. Anything that happens before 40 is called ovarian failure, which I have a personal issue against. I beat MS. I did my stem cell transplant. Um, no offense to men, the term ovarian failure was coined by a man, and a lot of terms in women's health are failure or failure to thrive, failure to progress. Um, and the term itself, I struggled a lot with when I went through it because, like I said, I beat MS. I've survived way worse throughout my entire medical journey, and I was basically being told that my body had failed me. Um, it was really difficult when you're going through it. I started having really bad hot flashes. I wasn't sleeping. I had bad heartburn. Um, and I went to one of my doctors to talk about it, and he wanted me to wait a year before I did anything about it. He said, let's wait a year. We'll have your hormones stabilize and see what happens. Um, I can tell you it's now been almost 6 years. My hormones have never come back. So it was a little overwhelming. My mom and I went through menopause at the same time. So that was very interesting. But I was able to do a fertility harvest. So I do have eggs in a freezer somewhere in Calgary that I can use when I want to have kids, and I can still have kids. So I was able to overcome that barrier. But there's a lot of changes that happen within your body that instead of going through them at 50, I went through at 27. So it was very overwhelming and it's very lonely because, like I said, my mom and I are going through the same time, very different ages, 55, 27. So there's not anyone my age really that I was able to talk to about it, which is why I talk to people about it now so that they're not alone.
Exactly. That's the best thing one can do. It's definitely not a easy thing at a, any time. But I'm also definitely glad that you can still, give birth, at least you still have some offering, as you said. It's very, very inspiring. And I also like to dive to the point of probably, I do not know how it also affects one when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to depression. And I also do not know how it also affects one when it comes to, probably their sexual life and stuff like that. I do not know, Mrs. Jess. How do you feel like menopause, affects a person? I know you said that is really challenging. How do you feel like it affects one when it comes to anxiety, depression? I do not know about more of, I do not know, but honestly speaking, how do you feel like it also affects one when it comes to sexual urge and even the sexual life, Mrs. Jess?
Yeah, so a lot of the traditional symptoms with menopause do have things like brain fog, and when I say or anxiety, people can get depressed. Um, Menopause is kind of like MS. There's like hundreds of symptoms, so people can get affected very differently. Um, like I said, I advocated for myself very quickly when I started waking up every morning and having the hot flashes. I went to my doctor and I said, I want to see a hormone specialist. And so I very quickly got put on hormone replacement therapy. I didn't wait the year. I said, you can take my blood now. You'll see. I'm like, I'm not having periods. I'm not having any of this. We can know something's happening. I want the hormones. Um, so I didn't, and I've never been as a whole, like I've had some anxiety in my life, but I tend to not be someone who gets overly anxious or depressed, depending on the circumstances. For me, I would say the biggest, like I had the physical symptoms, I had the hot flash, I had that. I do talk to a lot of friends and older individuals I know. Brain fog is one of the biggest one. It's like a very forgetful. And I was always, but I was forgetful, but I've always been forgetful. We can blame that on my mother. We're always forgetful. And I have ADHD, so I'm always kind of like bouncing around. The sexual health aspect is something I think people don't talk about enough. I'm very lucky. I met my fiance 3 months before I had my stem cell transplant. And so he was there when we did the fertility harvest, or I think it was about 4 months. So we did the fertility harvest. He was there. He actually took me to the fertility harvest at like the 3 month mark of our anniversary or our relationship. He gave me all of the fertility injections. Um, and he was there through all the chemo, and that I think was very impressive as someone who's never been around someone who's sick. And he stayed. And so I said, I know I've got to keep her. I knew from day one, 6 years later, we're still together. And we've had to have conversations about sexual health. I have a Substack and I write about women's health and I write about nutrition and everything I've gone through. And yesterday I had a post go up called vaginal dryness, the topic nobody wants to talk about. Um, and it's because if you're a female and you're experiencing vaginal dryness, one, that's an awkward conversation to have with your partner. Um, so I've been very lucky to be able to have those conversations with my partner. But then two, it's a really awkward conversation to go to a family doctor that you maybe see once a year for a physical. You might not be comfortable with that person. If because we are female, if you have a male doctor, you might not be even less comfortable talking. And what I tell people is there are medications people can take for it. I take an internal estrogen 3 times a week because it's not just your sexual health that you have to care about, it's all of your body's health, and that is an issue for people. And so there are ways to get around it, and there are treatments that you can take. But it is really hard to say vaginal dryness to anybody. So I get why people don't. But you can talk to people about it. And if you have a male doctor specifically and you're not comfortable, I would bring it up with a nurse first because your nurse tends to be female. And that's just how it is. Even when I did like my original doctor that I was talking to this all about, he was a male. Most of my fertility conversations happened with the female nurse that was there because he wasn't as comfortable and I didn't want to talk about vaginal dryness with him.
Completely agree, Mrs. Jess. I completely agree. It's something one no one to talk about. But I'm also definitely glad that you were able to even bring it out to the north. I think that is a very big development. And I'm also glad that you also had someone that really stood by your side throughout the whole process. It is a really, really big risk. It's a very massive development. And I remember you said it's not about the part, it's also all about the whole body. And that will also dive us to the point of diet, how one can also manage stress, and how one we have this lifestyle choices. I would like to ask how you personally, because you're not a medical person, you're just trying to impact people. How do you personally try to work on, diets, stress and lifestyle choices? How do you think it affects the symptom, and how do you think one can also use it to manage how do you just feel like diets, how do you like what's diets, how do you feel diet stress and lifestyle choices really impact a menopause? Let me just put it in that way.
Yeah, I look at diet as kind of a whole. So it's not just my menopause. Like I said, I got my university, I feel a little old now. So I got my first degree. I graduated in 2014. That was from health science. And while I was there, I took my first nutrition course. Um, and I will say at the time when I was in university, my MS was very, very active. I was having a relapse every year. I had to use a cane. Like I was very active in the disease. And so I started based on this one nutrition class, really changing my diet and really trying to be like, okay, I can't be the typical university student now who's eating craft dinner and instant noodles and going drinking every weekend. I have to take care of my body. I have to start eating better. Um, and I will preface this by saying I believe everybody is different. Um, I personally am plant-based vegan, so I don't eat meat. I don't eat dairy. I have lots of friends from your neck of the woods, and I think I might find it a little hard to eat where you are. Um, and but that's just something that really works for me. And I do that because one, I met animals, so I don't eat animals on a moral reason. But there is also like evidence about I saw a famous quote once and it says we're not baby cows. So we don't need like our dietary requirements are not the same as baby cows, so are we drinking the milk of a cow? And what I really believe in for nutrition, regardless if you eat meat, dairy, or you're plant-based like I am, is whole foods. So it's eating. I could show you, I have a pantry in my house. We moved into this house last year. We built basically my dream house. I've got this beautiful pantry. And within that pantry, I have dried beans, dried lentils. I've got 7 different types of flour because I make my own breads. Um, we have like I do have canned goods. Like people, I know that if money is an issue, like you can do canned goods. Everything in my house, the only meat actually that is in my house is for my dog. My partner doesn't also doesn't eat meat, and so when I talk to people, I just tell them eat more plants. Like if you want to eat meat, that's great, but eat some broccoli too. Eat more plants. There is a really great book that I always tell people to read called How Not to Die. And it's written by a very great doctor. He's a medical doctor. He studies nutrition. And it talks about the benefits of beans and lentils and whole grains and nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables. And he doesn't tell people they shouldn't eat meat, but he does talk about how the studies have shown that the nutrients that are in the plants, the nutrients that are in the whole foods, can combat some of the bad stuff we're eating. Um, I also tell people I have a lot of foods, like I eat a lot of soy. I have which scares people because there is like the oh my God, soy and estrogen and it's really bad for you. Uh, if you are going through menopause, and even if you're not, I will tell people that soy has something called phytoestrogens, which are not the same as estrogen. So it's not a female sex hormone. It is phytoestrogen. There has been some studies how they can actually help with menopause symptoms because they can basically your body can think it's almost like an estrogen, but it doesn't enact like it doesn't enact any of the sequences, but it can kind of trick your body into that. Um, so I always tell people like don't believe the hype. If soy and tofu gave everyone bigger boobs, we'd have no plastic surgery. And so I try to eat a diet that's really whole foods. It's very whole foods. It's like I do follow a diet every single day. I have leafy greens. Every single day I have berries. Every single day I have an apple and I have oatmeal to start my day. It's really just eating whole foods, um, which is a little harder right now because we're trying to only buy Canadian here or anything that's not the US right now. And because of that, we obviously can't grow grapes in Canada. We don't grow orange trees in Canada. We don't have the climate for that. So it's been getting creative. Um, but I think that our grocery store, my local grocery store, just got grapes from like South Africa because people are wanting the produce. But it's eating as whole foods as you can, just as much as you can, while still having treats. During the pandemic, I had a slice of cake a day. So you can still have treats.
Completely agree. Completely agree, Mrs. Jess. Diet is one of the most powerful thing one can definitely have. If someone is very great in the diet, then the health will really, really, follow with it. Having, most especially vegetables is even very powerful. It really helps the health in many ways. So I'm really, really glad inspiring people with that is a very, very massive development. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jess, for that insight. And I would also like to ask, lastly, Mrs. Jess, and I would like to ask people that a lot of women are in their 20s, they're in their 30s today, Mrs. Jess, and some we don't know, but some could be suspecting that they are in their hormone imbalance. What do you feel like are the first step they need to take, probably from your experience, Mrs. Jess?
I think you need to have an open conversation with a doctor that you trust. Um, I can't speak for the rest of the world and how it works in the medical system, but here, I always tell people you have the right to ask for a different doctor. I have had an MS neurologist in the past, and him and I didn't agree on my treatment. We didn't agree on how we should, like, he wanted to take risks that I wasn't comfortable taking. And so I asked for a different doctor, and I found a doctor that was more aligned with what I wanted to do. So, especially for women, um, I always say the medical system was not made for women, unfortunately. There's a lot where women's pain is not taken as seriously. At least here in like Canada and the US, it can take longer for women to get diagnosed with cancer. It can take longer for women to get our heart attack symptoms. For the longest time, people were using men's heart attack symptoms for women, even though they're completely different. Studies were never done on women because our hormones made it too unpredictable. And I was like, well, then why are you giving us medications when you haven't figured out what our hormones do to this? So it is really finding it's finding your own voice and being able to kind of document what's happening to you. I did this a lot, especially with my MS. I kept a symptoms journal. So I would say, this is what I ate today. This is how I was feeling. These are some symptoms that I noticed. So that when I went to my doctor, I was prepared. Do your research, but really open that communication with your doctor. They want to be able, they became doctors. 99% of them, I would say, want to help people. You might get one who you don't kind of vibe with, but you're going to find someone who wants to help you. Um, and just have that open conversation, because if you don't, you're just going to suffer in silence. Most of the time, if someone in their 20s and 30s goes through like full ovarian failure, like I did, there's a reason. There was chemotherapy, there was some kind of very traumatic event to the body. But that doesn't mean that women can be having hormone imbalances. That's not ovarian failure, but it's still an irregular cycle. And it is really important for our bodies and our health to have these things kind of looked at. I do take hormones every day. I take a hormone replacement every day because of when I went through ovarian failure. I haven't reached, and to this day, I have not reached peak bone density yet. And you need your hormones to do that.
Okay.
So you kind of like have that conversation. We know our bodies, you know what your period does, you know how you're feeling. Just start documenting everything. Um, yeah, because the first step is having a conversation with the doctor. And if the doctor dismisses you, ask for a second opinion. Go see someone else.
Completely agree. There are hundreds of doctors everywhere outside there that are willing to assist in those type of situation. So if one is definitely not responding, then another will definitely respond. They can never be the same. They can never have the same character or attitude. One will be nice, one might be not. So that is just the best advice I think they could we could have. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jess. And lastly, Mrs. Jess, there's a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Mrs. Jess, from the ancestor, sorry, from the forefathers, from the fathers, from the people who have passed on during the historic time. There are a lot of things that do exist during, during the forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time, Mrs. Jess, what do you think that thing would be?
Whole Foods. I think that this day and age, there are so many processed foods. There's so many processed foods. Um, and I don't demonize food. I do a course and I do an online talk about like diet culture, and I don't like saying food is bad and food is good. Food is food and people can afford what they can afford. Um, but there was a time when all of our meals were home cooked. And there was a time when, like, I don't know if you like what the cereal aisle is over there, but like our cereal over here is like super bright colors and like Fruit Loops and like the colors are insane. And like, there's, I would bring back Whole Foods. Like, I grew up with a family and my parents had a rule and they were like, you're allowed one junk food snack a day. So they're like, and as we got older, they said to us, they're like, hey, we're gonna buy you this box of cookies. It was a processed box of cookie. They're like, you can eat all of these today, but you're not getting another box till next week. So we learned a lot about moderation. And my sister and I, to this day, we come home, we'd rather have an apple than a cookie. Um, and so I would just bring back more whole foods. And simple recipes. I think people make it really, really complicated. I made dinner this week. It took me 20 minutes. I chopped up a bunch of vegetables. I put in like some store-bought gnocchi. I've got like it's literally wheat and like water, some gnocchi, and mixed it all in a bowl and put it in the oven. It took 20 minutes. It was 10 minutes prep. Bringing back those whole foods and like making cooking simple and teaching our kids to cook. Because that's something I was taught and it's served me very well over the last 33 years.
Yes, completely agree. We definitely need to, pass those things to the children. The children also need those learning so that they could also know, one or two things that could definitely help their health in situations when situations come on sometimes. Oh, food is really, really massive. Definitely, sometimes, in this time now, we definitely used to hear that majority of the food we have are most of chemical based food and stuff like that, but probably more whole food is great, and more, more food that will definitely help one health is just really, really important. I think that would be a very, very great one. I also want to use this opportunity. I know it's definitely not easy for a woman to also do stuffs like this. I noticed it. You are really, really inspiration to others. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the time, Mrs. Jess.
Yeah, and anyone can cook. Kids can cook. My partner, he doesn't do most of the cooking. I do most of the cooking, but he does know how to make soup. And I always tell people if you just learn one meal that you can make that's like healthy, then you're good to go. Just eat it as much as you can. And always like, yeah, just buy healthy foods, look at like the sodium content and the sugar content. But also really love food. Like I said, during the pandemic, I had a slice of cake a day. It was a
Exactly.
sad time.
Exactly. Completely agree with you, Mrs. Jess. Have a wonderful day, Mrs. Jess. Bye bye. And regards to your husband. Bye bye.